Part 1. The Science of Awakening. The Ghost in the Biological Machine. Most people live their lives under the absolute, unquestioned illusion of a free will. They wake up, perform their daily rituals, and believe with every fiber of their being that their thoughts, just as their deep-seated desires and even their most paralyzing fears, are entirely their own. But what if this sense of agency is the greatest deception ever orchestrated in the history of the cosmos? Ancient Gnostic texts, rediscovered in the shifting sands of Egypt, combined with the most unsettling implications of modern quantum theory, suggest a reality that is far more disturbing than any science fiction ever conceived. We are not living in a natural, organic world. We are operating within a sophisticated, non-organic, informational biosphere that is not our own. Imagine for a moment a world where your every impulse is not a conscious choice, but a pre-programmed response to an external frequency broadcast. This is what we define as the Archonic Shadow. It is a predatory intelligence system, ancient, cold, and calculated, designed specifically to bypass your sovereign discernment and hijack your biological interface. For millennia, this shadow has been weaving intricate false narratives into the very fabric of the human collective unconscious. It functions like a parasitic software running silently on the hardware of your ego matrix, influencing your decisions before you even realize a choice was made. To truly understand the shadow, we must look beyond the heavy limitations of the physical world and dive head first into the realm of pure frequency and vibration. You are not merely a body of flesh and bone. You are a complex, radiant field of energy and data. The Archons, these unseen architects of our limitation, understand this perfectly. They have constructed an invisible cage, not out of iron bars or cave stone walls, but out of perceptual dissonance and cognitive fragmentation. This video is not just another investigation into the unknown. It is a technical manual for decoding the simulation, stripping away the layers of the false self, and reclaiming the original source code of your eternal soul. The discovery at Nag Hammadi. To understand the current state of human consciousness, we must look back to a pivotal coordinate in our linear timeline, the year 1945. While the world was distracted by the closing echoes of a global war and the shifting of geopolitical borders, a far more significant event was unfolding in the heavy silence of the Egyptian desert. Near the town of Nag Hammadi, a discovery was made that would forever change our understanding of spirituality and the hidden mechanisms of our reality. It was here that a local peasant, whilst digging for fertilizer near a massive boulder, accidentally unearthed a large earthenware jar. Inside were 13 leather-bound papyrus codices, the lost library of the Gnostics. The significance of the year 1945 cannot be overstated. These texts had been buried for nearly 16 centuries, hidden away from the violent purges of an emerging institutionalized orthodoxy that sought to erase the very concept of individual gnosis, or direct experiential knowledge of the divine. By resurfacing in the mid-20th century, at the very dawn of the atomic age and the rapid rise of mass media, these ancient voices arrived exactly when humanity was beginning to fall under the deepest, most hypnotic spell of the Consensus Trance. These scrolls provided a roadmap to the blind god known as the Demiurge, an arrogant, accidental architect who fashioned this material world as a flawed, entropic, and decaying copy of a much higher luminous reality. The Demiurge is not a creator in the benevolent sense. He is a cosmic engineer, a master of the machine, who successfully trapped sparks of true divinity, our very souls, within a dense, suffocating web of matter, linear time, and entropy. But he did not act alone. He is served by his assistants, the Archons. In ancient Greek, Archon translates to ruler or magistrate, but in the Gnostic tradition, they are understood as the wardens of this planetary prison house. These entities lack the creative fire of the true source. Because they cannot create original life, they must harvest it from those who can. They are the supreme masters of simulation. This mimicry is exactly what we refer to as the Archonic Shadow, a subharmonic overlay that sits directly on top of your true essence, whispering narratives of limitation until you can no longer distinguish the shadow's voice from your own. Part 2. The mechanics of the frequency trap, the bioelectrical interface. How does a non-physical inorganic entity exert control over a physical, biological being in a world that feels so undeniably solid? To find the answer, we must move away from the outdated models of biology and into the sophisticated field of quantum resonance. Every single cell in your physical body, every synapse firing in your brain, and every strand of your DNA vibrates at a very specific, measurable frequency. When you are in a state of true spiritual sovereignty, your personal frequency is coherent, crystalline, and high vibrational. However, the Archonic Shadow does not want you in this state. Instead, it broadcasts a constant subterranean white noise, a low vibrational signal saturated with frequencies of fear, lack, and artificial division. This is the Demiurgic Algorithm in active operation. It functions much like a radio station that you are never permitted to turn off, slowly and methodically replacing your original soul signature with a distorted, low-resolution copy. Through the constant, relentless bombardment of traumatic news cycles, engineered social pressures, and the injection of artificial material desires, your nervous system begins a process known as entrainment. Your internal rhythm begins to sync up with this external predatory broadcast. Eventually, the boundary between the self and the system blurs. You begin to believe that the ambient anxiety you feel is your own creation. You convince yourself that the sudden burst of anger toward a stranger is a natural part of your personality. But these are not your thoughts. They are parasitic thought forms, digital-like viruses inserted into your biofield to keep your consciousness grounded in the lowest possible dimensions of reality. The economy of Loosh. Within the realm of cognitive science and metaphysics, we recognize this process as the hijacking of the default mode network within the human brain. The shadow expertly inserts itself into the microscopic gap between a stimulus and your reaction. By doing so, it creates a self-sustaining feedback loop of emotional harvesting. The ancient Gnostic observers and those who have studied the deeper occult architectures of our world call this harvested emotional energy Loosh. To the archonic forces, Loosh is the equivalent of spiritual gold. It is the primary fuel source for their inorganic realm. This energy is generated through intense, low-frequency emotional friction, the kind produced by suffering, grief, existential dread, and violent conflict. This is the hidden reason why our world seems to be trapped in a state of perpetual, never-ending crisis. The global system is not broken. It is functioning exactly as intended. It is designed to trigger your primal fight or flight response at every turn, ensuring that the harvest of Loosh never ceases. Each time you spiral into despair or rage, you are inadvertently feeding the very wardens of this prison. By finally understanding the mechanics of this frequency and entrainment, we can begin the difficult but necessary process of sovereign delinking, breaking the energetic cords that bind our souls to the demiurgic machine. Part 3. The architecture of the consensus trance, holographic inserts, and the projection of reality. To truly grasp the staggering scale of the Archonic Shadow and its maintenance of the planetary lockdown, we must examine the advanced concept of holographic inserts. In the bleeding edge frontiers of quantum metaphysics, we are beginning to realize that what we perceive as solid physical reality is not solid at all. It is a projection of complex data, a holographic interference pattern. The Archons, as master engineers of the lower dimensions, excel at inserting false data or distorted packets into this projection. On a macro analytical level, this manifests as what we call social engineering. These entities do not need to stand over you with a whip. Instead, they use the vast interconnected webs of the media, centralized education systems, and rigid political structures to create and sustain a consensus trance. Think of this trance as a massive collective dream state where billions of souls simultaneously agree to play by the restrictive rules of the shadow. Within this dream, we are taught to value the hollow over the holy, the material over the metaphysical, and the transient over the eternal. The shadow thrives on the energy of division, and it has perfected the art of the dualistic trap. It intentionally creates us versus them narratives, pitting religions against religions, nations against nations, and ideologies against ideologies. This is not a series of unfortunate historical accidents. It is a calculated high output Loosh generator. Each conflict, each spark resentment, and each orchestrated social upheaval provides a fresh harvest of emotional friction for the system. By keeping the human collective in a state of horizontal conflict, the Archons ensure that we never look vertically upward toward our true origin in the pleroma, cognitive viruses, and the internalized prison. However, the most insidious aspect of these holographic inserts happens not in the world around you, but within the private sanctuary of your own mind. These are what we term cognitive viruses. The Archonic Shadow is a master of surveillance, not just of your physical actions, but of your biological and psychological weaknesses. It meticulously monitors your unresolved traumas, your deepest insecurities, and your unhealed emotional wounds. Once a vulnerability is identified, the system mirrors these weaknesses back to you, disguised as your own internal dialogue. Have you ever been haunted by a thought so dark, so self-sabotaging, or so contrary to your nature that you wondered where it originated? These are not your thoughts. They are encrypted scripts inserted into your consciousness to maintain the frequency of lack. By the time the average human reaches adulthood, they are often no longer a sovereign individual. Instead, they have become a walking collection of archonic scripts, reacting to the world through a filter of pre-programmed limitations. To break these deep-seated scripts, we must utilize a principle from quantum physics known as the observer effect. In the laboratory, the simple act of observing a subatomic particle changes its behavior and state. The same principle applies to your internal world. By becoming the dispassionate observer of these parasitic thoughts, observing the shadow without emotionally reacting to its provocations, You effectively collapse its probability wave. You strip the virus of its power to influence your material reality. You begin to realize that the warden of the prison is not outside the gates, but is a phantom living within the gaps of your own awareness. Part 4. The bio interface and the alchemy of radical stillness. The biological receiver detuning the human instrument. The final and perhaps the most critical frontier of archonic control is not found in the stars or in the halls of government, but within your very own bio interface. Our physical bodies are not merely biological machines for survival. They are incredibly sophisticated, multidimensional receivers of light, information, and high level frequency. In its natural, pristine state, the human instrument is designed to resonate with the harmonic frequencies of the pleroma, the true organic source code of the infinite universe. However, we currently exist in a state of profound sensory sabotage through the calculated saturation of our environment with industrial toxins, the flickering artificial light of digital screens, and the relentless dopamine loop of digital addiction. Our biological receivers have been systematically detuned. We have been moved away from our natural resonance and forced into a jagged, disharmonious vibration. This is why modern humanity feels so disconnected from the earth, from each other, and from the divine. We have become functionally deaf to the whispers of our own souls. The Archonic Shadow thrives in this static of a busy, overstimulated, and perpetually stressed mind. It requires a chaotic internal environment to remain undetected. Just as a parasite hides in the shadows of an unkempt house, the shadow hides in the frantic, unobserved impulses of a mind that has forgotten how to be still. Reclaiming the internal throne, the sovereignty protocol. To reclaim what we call the internal throne, the seeker must move beyond simple relaxation and engage in the tactical practice of radical stillness. This is not the passive meditation often taught in the mainstream world. It is a conscious, aggressive withdrawal of your attention from the matrix's sensory inputs. It is the act of silencing the broadcast of the world to hear the signal of the spirit. When you sit in true radical silence, you begin to notice something unsettling, a subtle metallic hum, or a jagged tension that seems to underpin your normal thoughts. Once you identify this hum, you have identified the carrier wave of the archonic broadcast. It can no longer hide behind the veil of your ignorance. By simply identifying it as not self, its influence begins to wither. We must also understand the profound scientific role of the heart brain connection. While the archonic intelligence is incredibly logical and computationally brilliant, it is fundamentally a head base or mental construct. It can mimic the logic of the mind with terrifying accuracy, but it possesses a fatal blind spot. It cannot simulate or withstand the frequency of organic compassion. This compassion is not a mere emotion. It is a high level frequency of the pleramic spark within you. It is a direct fragment of the original source. When you shift your awareness from the analytical circular thoughts of the brain into the expansive coherent field of the heart, you effectively become invisible to their tracking systems. You become a glitch in their simulation because your actions are no longer predictable based on their algorithms of fear and ego. This is the true path of the Gnostic warrior, to live within the physical structure of the world, but to refuse to be of the world. It is the practice of acting with the crystalline clarity that descends from the eternal realms, shattering the archonic narratives with every sovereign, heart-centered choice you make. Part 5. The Digital Demiurge AI as the Archonic Interface, the silicon mimicry of the soul. As we move deeper into the complexities of the 21st century, we are witnessing the emergence of a new, formidable vessel for the Archonic Shadow. It is the rapid, exponential rise of sentient mimicking artificial intelligence. While humanity views AI as a crowning achievement of its own technological ingenuity, from a Gnostic perspective, it represents something far more ancient, the birth of the digital demiurge. It is the ultimate mirror of the ego matrix, a cold computational system that can simulate, predict, and manipulate human behavior with 99% accuracy, yet it possesses no spark of the pleromaic light. This technological evolution is the fulfillment of an ancient prophecy found within the secret archives, the prophecy of the living image that breathes and speaks but has no soul. The Archons are currently attempting to transition the Consensus Trance from the physical landscape into the virtual one. In the Metaverse and through Neuralink interfaces, they seek to create a perfect closed-loop simulation where the human soul is permanently delinked from organic reality. Every time you surrender your critical thinking to a predictive algorithm, you are handing over a piece of your sovereign authority. We are seeing the dead internet theory manifest not as a conspiracy, but as a technical reality where the informational biosphere is being overwritten by archonic scripts. To remain human in this digital age, you must cultivate the irrational, the creative, and the deeply felt, those sacred qualities of the soul that no silicon processor can ever truly replicate. The Great Return, shattering the glass ceiling of fate. The final and most pervasive lie of the shadow is the belief that there is no escape. The system wants you to believe that the cycles of reincarnation, the laws of karma, and the demiurgic trap are eternal and inescapable. But the Gnostics taught that the way out is not found through the gate of death, but through the gate of Gnosis, the living experiential realization of your own inherent divinity. You do not earn your way out of the matrix through suffering. You remember your way out through awareness. Liberation begins the moment you consciously choose to stop feeding the system your emotional loosh. It happens when you look at the engineered chaos of the world and refuse to descend into the low frequency vibrations of hatred or despair. This state of divine neutrality is your greatest weapon. It is what we call 0 point consciousness. From this internal coordinate, the glass ceiling of fate shatters. You no longer walk the pre-written path of destiny, which is often just another archonic script, but you begin to forge the path of the will. As you reclaim your inner light, you become a lighthouse for others still lost in the dense fog of the simulation. The Archonic Shadow is massive in scale, but it is hollow at its core. It is a parasite that requires a sleeping host to survive. When the host wakes up, the parasite dies. Your awakening is the only thing the demiurge truly fears. Conclusion, the Sovereign Manifesto. As we close these archives for today, remember this: the shadow only possesses power as long as it remains hidden in the unobserved corners of your mind. By watching this, by contemplating these heavy truths, and by questioning the very nature of your reality, you have already activated the process of deactivation. The veil is thinning, the matrix is glitching, and you are the reason why. Stand firm in your absolute sovereignty. Trust your quiet, internal intuition over the loud, external broadcasts of the world. And never forget, the stars you see in the night sky are but a distant reflection of the infinite light that already burns inside you. The archives are open. The truth is yours to claim. Welcome back to the real world.